Yun Chujio shamelessly poked the little silver snake's head. If you continue to stare at me, I will really attack you. Previously, in the script, before Yun Chujio could finish her words, the little silver snake had already started to gnaw on the ribs. A certain someone secretly gritted his teeth. Little rascal, when I fully recover, Ichin. Seeing that a certain being had submitted, Yun Chujio's lips revealed a hint of complacency. Today was the day to be drunk, and today was the day to be drunk. If he could bully her for a day, then so be it. As for the future, who cares? At night, when a certain being was threatened by Hei Shinjio, he had no choice but to sing a lullaby in his head. A certain being felt that he really couldn't live this life anymore. The next morning, Yun Chujio opened her eyes in a refreshed manner. She thought that the small silver snake would still hide out like yesterday, but she didn't expect that the small silver snake would obediently lie on the side of the bed. The corner of Yun Chujio's mouth curled up. Had she broken a broken pot? She did not know that a certain someone had thought things through. Right now, he had no way of dealing with the little rascal. He might as well grit his teeth and endure it. After he recovered, he would slowly settle the score with her. After breakfast, Yun Chujio received a notice from the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall, asking her to go to the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall to register for the inner disciple selection. After receiving the notice, Yun Chujio did not rush to the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall directly. Instead, she strolled towards Zhang Li's courtyard. Before she entered the courtyard, she heard Zhuang Hong's disdainful voice coming from inside. Zhang Li, I've really underestimated the extent of your shamelessness. Do you know that every time Master sees you, he will be very sad? You'd better not appear in front of Master in the future, or else you'll be in trouble. Junior brother Zhuang, of course I've always treated you well. When you first entered the sect, I was the one who taught you swordsmanship step by step. Why are you targeting me now? Targeting you? You don't have the right to make me target you. I just don't want to see Master sad. You'd better take care of yourself. A person like you should consciously get out of the nameless sword sect. Zhang Li was angry and disappointed. He didn't know what to say for a moment. Yo, Martial Uncle Zhang, it's so early in the morning. Why is there a dog barking in your yard? Yun Chujio said as she walked into the yard. Zhuang Hong wasn't stupid. Of course, he could hear that Yun Chujio was scolding him. He glared at Yun Chujio fiercely. Yun Chujio, don't think that you're great just because you made some earth fire. A piece of trash like you won't be able to enter the inner sect. TSK, you probably don't know yet, right? Martial Uncle Zhang is also going to participate in the inner sect selection. Are you afraid? Zhuang Hong's expression immediately changed. Zhang Li, you can't be so ignorant, right? Are you trying to anger Master to death? Zhang Li was just about to speak when Yun Chujio spoke first. The sect master wants to see Martial Uncle Zhang pull himself together the most, so why would he be angry? I'm afraid the one who's angry is you, right? Someone must be so afraid that he can't sleep. After all, Martial Uncle Zhang's spiritual power is much stronger than someone else's. Someone's wishful thinking is about to fail. Zhuang Hong's expression became even more unsightly. He gritted his teeth and said, Zhang Li, even if you can re-enter the inner sect, Master will definitely not take you in again. Just give up on this idea. After Zhuang Hong finished speaking, he left angrily. Zhang Li laughed bitterly and then looked at Yun Chujio. Martial nephew Yun, why did you offend him just to stand up for me? Besides, I won't participate in the inner sect disciple selection. If you don't participate in the inner sect disciple selection, how can you fight with Wan Qingbo? How can you fight with Elder Wan? Martial Uncle Zhang, don't let me look down on you. Yun Chujio said this and ignored Zhang Li. She directly left the courtyard. This guy was certain that Zhang Li would participate in the inner disciple selection in the end. She was helping him as well as herself. It would be even more difficult for her to gain a foothold in the inner sect. She had to get a few helpers for herself. Mu Jiang and Zhao Hui would definitely participate in the inner disciple selection. Moreover, their spiritual power was considered to be among the best among the outer disciples. There was a high chance that they would pass the selection successfully. Although Yuan Qi and the other's spiritual power could not compare to Zhao Hui and the others, they had the support of their families. With more spiritual weapons, they might be able to pass the selection. In this way, at least she would not be fighting alone. As the selection was to begin in 5 days, there were many disciples who signed up at the Miscellaneous Affairs office. Yun Chujio waited for quite a while before it was her turn. According to the regulations of the Nameless Sword sect, only outer disciples who had entered the sect for more than 5 years were qualified to participate in the selection of inner disciples. Therefore, Yun Chujio's special case naturally attracted the attention of many people. Of course, most of these gazes were filled with disdain. They felt that Yun Chujio was overestimating herself. One had to know that the inner sect selection was a real sword and spear competition. Although Yun Chujio had randomly encountered a dead rat and learned 3 mysterious sword moves, now that everyone had learned those 3 moves. Moreover, Yun Chujio's spiritual power was much lower than the others. She might not even pass the first round of the selection. Yun Chujio did not care about these stares at all. After she finished signing up, she went straight to the number 9 sword forging hall. Hall Master Zhuge saw her and said with a cold face, "You want to participate in the selection of inner disciples? What nonsense! Don't lose your life by accident." Yun Chujio understood Hall Master Zhuge's temper and knew that he was showing concern for her in a disguised way. She smiled and said, "I cherish my life very much. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me." Hall Master Zhuge's face darkened when he saw Yun Chujio's heartless look. He was about to continue saying something when Yun Chujio said with a smile, "Hall Master, here, this is for you." Hall Master Zhuge looked at the item that Yun Chujio handed over and was immediately shocked. This is the earth fire of a king-level fire spirit beast? Hall Master Zhuge did not expect that Yun Chujio would leave him a copy of the King Fire Essence Beast's earth fire. Speaking of which, he had always been indifferent to this little girl. Moreover, every time she was in trouble, he had the heart but was powerless to help her. He really felt guilty. Hall Master Zhuge was at a loss for words. Just when he did not know what to say, Yun Chujio said with a smile, "Hall Master, are you going to be so touched that you're going to cry?" Hall Master Zhuge glared at her. "Nonsense. If you have the time to talk nonsense, you might as well think about how to save your life. Wan Qingba will definitely have to do something. Don't be careless." Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. "When the time comes, I will take it as it comes. This time, I must enter the inner sect. I will kill anyone who stands in my way." When Hall Master Zhuge and the north, south, east, and west heard Yun Chujio's chilling words, the worry in their hearts was immediately reduced by more than half. Although this little girl had a temperamental personality, she seemed to be able to turn the situation around every time. This time, they believed that she could do it as well. Yun Chujio chatted with them for a while more before she hopped away. The disciples of the sword forging hall were different from ordinary disciples. They did not participate in the selection of inner disciples. Their honor and disgrace were all tied to their respective hall masters. If the hall masters could be promoted from the lower house to the middle house, their status would naturally change from outer disciples to inner disciples. This was also the reason why many people were willing to become sword-forging disciples. Yun Chujio hopped around the bounty hall again. As she wished, she saw that Steward Zheng was no longer there. When Steward Qian, who was on duty, saw this guy, his attitude was extremely good. What a joke! He did not want to repeat Manager Zheng's mistake. Therefore, He Xinjiu exchanged the remaining earth fire for 10,000 sect contribution points. After Master Ouyang found out, the corner of his mouth twitched. He originally thought that the 2 requests of the little girl were a little simple, but it turned out that they were just additional conditions. Yun Chujio found Zhao Hui again and planned to understand the selection process of the inner sect and some small news. Zhao Hui was quick-witted. After seeing Yun Chujio's outstanding qualities, he made up his mind to follow her. Therefore, he told Yun Chujio everything he knew. Yun Chujio simply had dinner in Zhao Hu's courtyard. After chatting for a while, she returned to her dormitory. Pan, DN01, him in a trance, she felt as if she had forgotten something. However, after thinking about it for a while, she couldn't recall anything, so she decided not to think about it and continued to cultivate. It was only when this fellow was yawning and preparing to sleep that she remembered what she had forgotten. Cough, cough, she had forgotten to feed the little silver snake dinner. At this moment, a certain honored guest in his sleeve pocket nearly died from anger. This little rascal was so engrossed in eating and drinking with that Zhao Hui that he actually didn't care about whether he was dead or alive. Was he going to starve his husband to death? A certain someone had completely forgotten that he wouldn't die even if he starved for 10 days to half a month. How could he die after just one meal? Yun Chujio looked guilty as she took out the small silver snake from her sleeve pocket. After feeling a certain someone's dense resentment and cold air, she laughed dryly. My Prince Charming, I'm sorry. I was so engrossed in understanding the selection of the inner sect that I forgot about you. Well, I remember that you said that eating is a waste of time. I'll put a bottle of fasting pills in my sleeve from now on. If you're hungry, you can eat fasting pills. A certain someone, this was torture. Naked torture. Could it be that in her heart, he couldn't be compared to that idiot Buttface? Buttface still had bones to gnaw on. Why did he have to bitterly swallow fasting pills? Therefore, a certain someone closed his eyes and ignored Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio poked the silver snake's head with her hand, but the certain someone acted as if he didn't feel anything and still didn't open his eyes. Yun Chujio was speechless. Why did she feel that ever since the pretty boy turned into the silver snake, his arrogance had disappeared, leaving only arrogance? In the end, Yun Chujio personally fed the small silver snake half a bowl of porridge and a few pieces of ribs. A certain someone finally felt a little better. How confident are you in the selection of the inner sect? A certain someone asked stiffly, but there was an unconcealable concern in his tone. Yun Chujio curled the corners of her lips. 10 points. A certain someone, pretend he didn't ask anything. Chapter 3906. The first round of the selection. Yun Chujio and a certain venerable were talking incoherently. The kitten in the spirit beast pouch was getting restless. When this wretched girl participated in the inner sect selection, she might be killed by someone. Then wouldn't she regain her freedom? Moreover, the idiots in the spirit beast pouch were each dumber than the last. With a little trick, it could eat a few of them. At that time, it would be able to fly freely in the sky and leap freely in the sea. Therefore, the kitten could not wait for the inner disciple selection to begin immediately. However, Hei Shinjio was faced with a difficult question. Should she bring a certain venerated beast along with her? If a certain venerated beast transformed into a human form on the competition stage, the scene would be too beautiful for Hei Shinjio to imagine. However, if she did not bring it along with her, she was afraid that a certain venerated beast would be in danger. Although the small silver snake still had some spiritual power left, if she encountered a powerful opponent, she would only end up dead. In the end, Yun Chujio decided to bring a certain someone with her. At most, she would react to his reaction and adapt to the situation. This guy had prepared a dehua cloth in his storage ring. Once a certain someone transformed, she would immediately cover him so that he would not be exposed. Hei Shinjio said mysteriously to a certain someone, Prince Charming, if there really is an accident, just cover your face. At that time, I will say that the one who ran away was Wu Ji's head. A certain god, should he sympathize with that idiot Shui Wuji, or should he feel miserable for his own situation? Finally, in Cat Cub's anticipation, the selection of the nameless sword sect's inner court disciples began. Yun Chujio strolled to the square of the lower house. At this time, there were already several competition stages set up in the square, and under each competition stage, there were many disciples gathered. The rules of the first round of the inner sect selection were very simple and crude. That was, only after defeating 5 people in a row could one advance. Moreover, each person only had one chance, whether it was the challenger or the challenged. Once they failed, they would lose the qualification to participate in the selection. The first batch of challengers who entered the arena all thought that their spiritual power was not bad, but no one went up to challenge them. The reason was very simple. Unless they had absolute confidence in winning, they might lose the opportunity to participate in the selection. Naturally, they had to be careful. Therefore, when Yun Chujio arrived, she saw many disciples standing alone on the competition stage. Although there were many disciples gathered under each competition stage, no one went up to challenge them. When Yun Chujio was looking around curiously, Zhao Hui came over. He saw that Yun Chujio was a little curious, so he explained, "Junior sister Yun, you're here? Every year during the selection, it will be like this at the beginning. Now, it's a probing stage. When someone goes up to fight, I have a rough estimate in my heart, and the scene will become lively." Yun Chujio nodded. This was easy to understand. Knowing yourself and knowing your enemy, you will always win. It was estimated that the first ones to challenge the stage were either pretentious or had no hope of advancing at all. Yun Chujio glanced around and found an empty competition stage in the corner. She said to Zhao Hui, "Senior brother Zhao, you watch first. I'll go up first." The reason why this fellow was so anxious was because he was afraid that something would happen to a certain honored warrior. It was better to end the battle as soon as possible. While Zhao Hui was stunned, Yun Chujio had already squeezed through the crowd and walked towards the competition stage in the corner. Zhao Hui was so anxious that he gritted his teeth. This junior sister Yun was too arrogant. She was definitely going to be eliminated. Chapter 3907. How much money do you need? The moment Yun Chujio stepped onto the competition stage, she immediately attracted the attention of many people. Isn't that Yun Chujio? Is she crazy or stupid? Why is she on the competition stage now? I guess this idiot is participating in the selection for the first time and doesn't know how powerful it is. TSK, a third-level spirit cultivator actually has the nerve to be the first to step onto the stage. She really overestimates herself. Level 3 psychic? Why do I remember that not long ago, she was still at level 9 of the spirit transformation realm? Who cares how many levels she has? In any case, she is much lower than us. Let's not talk about it anymore. I want to go up and challenge her. My first victory will depend on her. Perhaps, everyone felt that Yun Chujio, this soft persimmon, was easier to deal with. Therefore, they all swarmed under the number 19 competition stage where Yun Chujio was. Moreover, the crowd was arguing over who should go up and challenge. Some even started fighting directly below the stage. It was simply a mess. The discipline hall was responsible for maintaining the order of the inner sect selection competition. Coincidentally, the person on duty today was an old acquaintance of Yun Chujio, Manager Song. After receiving the report, Manager Song went to the scene and saw that his head was buzzing. How could this Yun Chujio cause trouble wherever she went? Were these people full of themselves? Why were they fighting below? With the intervention of the discipline hall, the situation was finally under control. However, there were still many disciples who wanted to compete with Yun Chujio on the stage. Just as Manager Song was about to suppress them, he heard Yun Chujio, who was on the stage, say faintly, "Since you all want to compete with me so much, then let's compete. Whoever has the most money will come up and compete with me." Manager Song's nose almost went crooked from anger. How badly do you need money? You want to make a profit from participating in the selection? In your dreams? Who would have thought that a disciple would immediately say, "I'll bid 100 upper-grade spirit stones, I must be the first one on the stage today." 100? Aren't you too stingy? I'll bid 500. I'll bid 800. Manager Song was speechless as he looked at the sky. Were these people crazy? How could Manager Song know that those disciples were already hot-blooded because of the dispute? At this moment, the competition was no longer about who would compete with Yun Chujio first, but about competing with each other. Yun Chujio simply took a chair from her storage ring, crossed her legs, and watched the people below while munching on melon seeds until her face was red and her neck was thick. Finally, a disciple shouted the price of 10,000 high-grade spirit stones. Although the others were not convinced, they felt that it was not worth it to spend 10,000 spirit stones just to fight for their lives. Thus, they all stopped fighting. A glimmer of light flashed in the disciple's eyes, and he jumped onto the competition stage. Yun Chujio slowly put the chair into her storage ring and then stretched out her hand. You transfer the spirit stones to me first, or else the senior brothers below the stage won't agree. Immediately, the disciples who had failed the auction earlier began to clamor. That disciple had no choice but to transfer 10,000 high-grade spirit stones to Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio was about to speak, but her identity jade tablet started to tremble. After Yun Chujio sent her divine sense into it. Zhao Hu's worried voice came from inside. Junior Marshal Sister Yun, the person on the stage is called Zhang Su. He's Wan Qingbao's man. You have to be careful. Yun Chujio acknowledged and then raised her eyes to size up Zhang Su. She was a little puzzled at first. Was this person crazy enough to pay 10,000 high-grade spirit stones just to fight with her? So it turned out that he was up to something. At this time, the disciple sneered and said, Yun Chujio, the swords and sabers on the stage have no eyes. If I'm not careful, I might hurt you. This 10,000 high-grade spirit stones can be considered as compensation for you. Chapter 3908. You are too vicious. Yun Chujio laughed lightly. Don't talk nonsense if you can do it. You are a fool who spent money to buy suffering. Yun Chujio's words caused the audience to burst into laughter. How could Zhang Su endure it? He immediately took out his sword and stabbed at Yun Chujio's heart. The force was so strong and the speed was so fast that it was obvious that he wanted to take the opportunity to kill Yun Chujio. Manager Song frowned. Although he had to use all his strength on the competition stage, he still had to avoid injuring his life. This Zhang Su was a bit too ruthless. That Yun Chujio was also overestimating herself. You are just a little trash at the 3rd level of spiritual link. Why are you going on stage? One had to know that the spiritual power of these outer sect disciples was at least at the 7th level of spiritual link and above. They were usually at the 8th or 9th level. Wasn't this asking for a beating? Manager Song felt that based on the difference in spiritual power between the two, Yun Chujio would be defeated in less than 10 moves. However, just as he was thinking about it, he heard a burst of exclamations from the crowd. He looked up and saw a huge spiritual beast appear on the competition stage. That was a pig, right? Zhang Su was obviously shocked as well. However, on second thought, although this spiritual beast was huge, Yun Chujio's spiritual power was so low, so this thing wouldn't be very powerful. Therefore, he raised his sword and stabbed at De Hua. De Hua did not even bother to look at him. She raised her huge hooves and stepped on Zhang Su's sword. Although Zhang Su's sword chi had cut De Hua's hooves, De Hua was only a spiritual beast, so it would not feel any pain even if it was cut open. Instead, it was Zhang Su who was stepped on by De Hua's hooves. Zhang Su desperately waved his sword and finally crawled out from under De Hua's hoof in a sorry state. Immediately, panic rose in his heart. This stinky girl's spiritual beast was actually so powerful? Yun Chujio crossed her arms and stood at the side. The corner of her mouth held a smile as she looked at De Hua, who was torturing him. However, her right hand was sneakily teasing a certain person in her sleeve pocket. Zhang Su was so angry that he gritted his teeth. However, De Hua's huge body was like a small mountain that blocked his attack. He had no way to hurt Yun Chujio at all. Not only that, even though his sword chi made De Hua's color weaken a little, De Hua did not disappear. He was forced to a corner of the competition stage step by step. Just as De Hua was about to kick Zhang Su away, Yun Chujio said faintly, De Hua, senior brother Zhang said that swords have no eyes. It is inevitable to be injured. Aren't you being too hasty to let him go? De Hua immediately understood what Yun Chujio meant. His huge body suddenly leaped forward and pressed on Zhang Su's body. Everyone heard the sound of bones breaking coming from Zhang Su's body, which was really creepy. After this, although Zhang Su was not going to lose his life, he would have to lie on the bed for at least a year and a half. Zhang Su took out a handful of pills and stuffed them into his mouth. Only then did he not pass out. He gritted his teeth and looked at Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio, you are too vicious. Yun Chujio curled the corners of her lips. Vicious? You wanted to kill me in the beginning. I was merciful enough to spare your life out of consideration for the friendship of my fellow disciples. How about I send you on your way right now? Manager Song was afraid that Yun Chujio would really kill him, so he quickly asked 2 disciples of the discipline hall to carry Zhang Su down. Unexpectedly, Yun Chujio said with a faint smile, "Wait." Manager Song's heart skipped a beat. What did this troublemaker want to do? Did she really want to kill Zhang Su? Chapter 3909 Fame After a battle. Just as Manager Song was about to stop her, Yun Chujio took out a spirit stone from her storage ring and threw it to Zhang Su. "Here, keep this money for your treatment. The wool is on the sheep anyway, it's all your own money." Zhang Su spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Manager Song's eyes twitched. This troublemaker was really mean. The others below the competition stage thought so too, especially after seeing De Hua. They changed their previous enthusiasm and retreated without a trace, then ran away. What a joke, this little girl's hands are really dark. Wouldn't she be asking for a beating if she went up? Thus, Hei Shinjio tragically discovered that no one was competing with her anymore. The other competition stages were all in full swing, but her competition stage was only left with her alone. Not to mention the contestants, there wasn't even a single audience member. If she had known earlier, she would have taken it easy. Weren't these people too timid? She didn't do anything. Didn't she just beat that Zhang Su until all his limbs and bones were shattered? Was it really that scary? This fellow was really impatient from waiting. He waved at Manager Song. "Manager Song, it's not a good thing for me to wait like this. How about this? You'll go back to the dormitory and take a nap first. If anyone wants to compete with me, you can send me a message." Manager Song was about to refuse when he heard Yun Chujio say faintly, "If you don't agree, you'll become a demon. You know my ability." Manager Song almost vomited blood. In the Nameless Sword sect, only this troublemaker dared to threaten him so blatantly. Manager Song only had to grit his teeth and agree. Seeing that he agreed, Yun Chujio immediately jumped off the competition stage and secretly gave Manager Song a dragon whisker crimson afterglow grass. A few days ago, she saw Manager Song issuing this mission on the 2nd floor of the lower house's bounty hall. Coincidentally, she had it in her storage ring, so it was just right for her to use it as a favor. The more expensive the gift, the better. It was to suit his taste. Sure enough, Manager Song's expression was shocked. If Yun Chujio had given him spirit stones, he would have refused her sternly. However, although the dragon beard scarlet multicolored grass was an earth-grade high-grade one, it was rarely seen on the market, so he was a little hesitant. In such a moment of hesitation, Yun Chujio had already skipped away. Manager Song didn't know what he was feeling at that moment. Was this considered a slap and a red date? Yun Chujio became famous after a battle. Although it was a bad reputation, the effect was obvious. That afternoon, no one challenged Hei Shinjio. This guy was happily teasing a certain arrogant man in the yard. "Prince Charming, you've always been like this. How soft and cute you are." Hei Shinjio said with a smile while holding her chin. A certain someone snorted coldly. It was probably because he was easy to bully. Besides, soft and cute? Cute? Did these words have anything to do with him? Yun Chujio sighed and continued, "If you are always like this, I can bring you by my side at any time, and we can always be together." A certain someone could hear a trace of grievance and helplessness in Yun Chujio's words. His heart turned sour and throbbed in pain. He wished that he could immediately hug Yun Chujio in his arms and not let her suffer any more harm or grievance. However, a certain someone quickly fed this thought to the dog. That was because he heard Yun Chujio continue, "Actually, the most important thing is that if you continue to be like this, I can bully you unscrupulously. Ha! Come, little baby, sing a lullaby for your sister." Chapter 3910 was like ordering his grandson around. A certain venerable stared at Hei Shinjio coldly and squeezed out a few words through gritted teeth. "Little Jio, if you don't know how to restrain yourself, wait until I recover." Upon hearing the words of a certain venerable, Hei Xinjia's small face immediately twitched and even trembled slightly. A certain venerable said that this little rascal finally knew how to be afraid. If he had known earlier, he would have said something ruthless earlier. Just as a certain someone was thinking about it, he heard Yun Chujio say in an exaggerated tone, I'm so scared. My little heart is so scared that it won't even jump. Ha. A certain someone looked at Hei Shinjio, who was laughing so hard that he was so angry that the entire snake was in a bad mood. He might as well close his eyes and not see. Just as Yun Chujio was about to continue provoking a certain someone, her identity jade plate started to tremble. After she sent her spiritual sense in, she realized that it was from Manager Song. After she heard Manager Song's message, her face couldn't help but turn slightly cold. Manager Song had told her that the sect's higher-ups had issued a new competition rule. For the sake of fairness, everyone was prohibited from using spiritual beasts. For the sake of fairness? This rule was completely targeted at her. In the Nameless Sword sect, she was the only one who had a spiritual beast, all right. Yun Chujio laughed lightly. Did she think that this would be enough to stop her? She had entered the meditative state of the inner sect. The next morning, before Yun Chujio could even get up, her identity jade plate started trembling. She impatiently sent her spiritual sense into it. Manager Song's urging voice came from inside. Yun Chujio, because of the new rules, many people want to challenge you. Come over quickly. Hei Shinjio closed her eyes and said impatiently, let them bid first. Let me know when there's a result. On the other side, Manager Song. He knew that he should not have accepted the dragon-beard scarlet sunset grass that caused trouble yesterday. Now, she was ordering him around like a grandson. Yun Chujio went back to sleep again until Manager Song warned her that she would be disqualified if she did not show up. Then, she got up and rushed to the square of the lower house with a meat bun in her mouth. When Yun Chujio was halfway there, she met Zhao Hui, who was rushing over. Zhao Hui looked anxious. Junior Sister Yun, some disciples are saying that they want to disqualify you from the competition. Why are you so late? Quick, come with me. Hearing that, Yun Chujio hastened her steps. This guy had a battle of wits and courage with a certain someone yesterday and didn't fall asleep until the second half of the night. That was why he stayed in bed this morning. It had to be said that a beautiful snake misled people. Zhao Hui said as he walked. Junior Sister Yun, I saw that the few people in front of the auction are all disciples who usually listen to Wan Qingbao's orders. Moreover, you are no longer allowed to use spiritual beasts. You have to be careful. Yun Chujio nodded in agreement. Seeing that she still did not seem to care, Zhao Hui became even more worried. He was now placed in the same camp as Yun Chujio. If anything happened to her, Wan Qingba would probably find trouble with him soon. So, God bless Junior Sister Yun and let her enter the inner sect smoothly. From afar, Yun Chujio saw that there were many people gathered under the number 19 competition stage. There were more than 10 times more people than the other competition stages. This guy could not help but curse in his heart. Fuck, these people were so interested in her? How could this guy know that ever since she became famous in the battle yesterday, her popularity had increased by leaps and bounds? Many people wanted to see how miserable she would be without her spiritual beast. Chapter 39:11. When the crowd saw Yun Chujio coming over, they took the initiative to make way for her. However, their eyes were full of schadenfreude. This Yun Chujio was most likely going to be unlucky. The few people who went up to the stage first today were all top experts in the outer sect. Moreover, they usually had a good relationship with Zhang Su, so they definitely would not let Yun Chujio off easily. Most importantly, they were not allowed to use the spirit beast today, so how could Yun Chujio have any advantages? Just wait to be abused. After seeing Yun Chujio, Manager Song gave her a look that said, Yun Chujio. Then he deliberately emphasized, Yun Chujio, during the selection process, you can take the initiative to admit defeat. If one side admits defeat, the other side cannot attack again. Do you understand? Yun Chujio knew that Manager Song was reminding her that if she could not hold on, she should admit defeat so that she would not be at a disadvantage. Yun Chujio just smiled faintly and then jumped onto the competition stage. Almost as soon as she stepped onto the competition stage, a male disciple also jumped onto the competition stage. The male disciple was about to speak, but Yun Chujio said first, "You first hand over the spirit stones for the auction." The male disciple snorted coldly and handed over 8,000 upper-grade spirit stones to Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio frowned. "So little? It's not even enough to fill the gaps between her teeth. How about this? I defeated one yesterday. Including you, there are still 3 spots left. The 3 people who are ranked at the back, give me the spirit stones too and make an appointment first." Everyone was so angry that their noses almost went crooked. This thing even has an appointment? Moreover, how did you know that you could defeat Lu Xiaotao on the stage? I've seen shameless people before, but this is the first time I have seen such shameless people. The disciple opposite Yun Chujio, who was also Lu Xiaotao, was also extremely angry. "Damned girl, don't talk big. Beat me first before you say anything else." Yun Chujio ignored him and continued to say to the audience, "Those who were ranked 2nd to 4th just now, don't leave. Whoever leaves will be a grandson." Zhao Hui was on the verge of tears. This great aunt was too good at gaining hatred points. She was seeking death by playing tricks. Lu Xiaotao could not take it anymore. Yun Chujio was clearly looking down on him, as if he would definitely lose. She really overestimated herself. If it was yesterday, he really did not have much confidence. However, she could not use her spiritual beast now, so she was not his opponent at all. Lu Xiaotao thought of the things that Wan Qingba had instructed him to do. Later in the competition, even if he accidentally killed him, he would not receive too much punishment. She had brought this upon herself. Thinking of this, Lu Xiaotao summoned his treasured sword and stabbed it directly at Yun Chujio's throat. After Yun Chujio nimbly dodged it, her body flashed to Lu Xiaotao's side like a demonic charm, and she stabbed her sword at Lu Xiaotao's lower abdomen. Lu Xiaotao was shocked. Although this wretched girl's spiritual power was low, her movement technique was fast enough. He had to be careful. The two of them fought back and forth. Everyone saw that Yun Chujio was not at a disadvantage and could not help but feel a little surprised. Although this Yun Chujio's spiritual power was low, her sword technique and movement technique were not bad. However, as time passed, the difference in spiritual power would be revealed. At that time, she would most likely lose without a doubt. Everyone thought so. Zhao Hui also had a worried expression on his face. Junior sister Yun was most likely going to lose. Right at this moment, Yun Chujio released a fleeting giant-winged bird from her spirit beast pouch. Lu Xiaotao was stunned at first, then he said with a contemptuous smile, "Yun Chujio, this spirit pet of yours is only at the 7th level of the spirit transformation realm. It's simply courting death. Not to mention 1, even 2 would be useless." Yun Chujio laughed lightly. "Is that so? Then let's give it a try." As Yun Chujio said, sure enough, she let out a shadow-skimming giant-winged bird from the spiritual beast bag. Chapter 39:12. Are you the only one who has a spiritual pet? Lu Xiaotao clearly did not expect Yun Chujio to really have 2 giant-winged birds. Although these giant-winged birds were only at the 7th level of the spirit transformation realm, he did not have much of an advantage to begin with. If Yun Chujio had the help of these 2 demonic birds, it was very likely that he would be at a disadvantage. Just as Lu Xiaotao was in a daze, the 2 giant-winged birds shot several water arrows at him. They were so stifled in the spirit beast pouch that they were about to turn into mushrooms. It was not easy for him to get a chance to take a walk today, so he naturally had to make good use of it. Lu Xiaotao quickly brandished his sword and used the sword aura to block the water arrows. Before he could let out a sigh of relief, Yun Chujio's sword had also arrived. This fellow was afraid that using the large kitchen knife would trigger killing intent, so he casually took out a treasure sword from his storage ring and made do with it. Actually, there were dozens of immortal swords in this fellow's storage ring. They were all obtained from the ancient sword tomb. However, this fellow was afraid that she would attract attention if she took them out, so she just randomly chose an ordinary treasure sword. This fellow was still cursing in her heart. Actually, if she used the sword techniques on the stone wall, she would be able to torture this Lu Xiaotao to death within minutes. However, that was something that could not be seen in the light. It seemed that if there was an opportunity, she would have to make a few more trips to the ancestral master's cave abode and find an excuse to announce a few more sword techniques. However, with the help of the two giant winged birds, Yun Chujio gradually gained the upper hand. Very soon, Lu Xiaotao could only parry and was unable to retaliate. He was forced to the edge of the competition stage by Yun Chujio. Lu Xiaotao thought of Zhang Su's miserable state and gritted his teeth. Since he had already lost, he might as well jump down to avoid suffering. Thus, Lu Xiaotao directly jumped off the stage and admitted defeat. Yun Chujio curled her lips and looked down the stage. Where's the second place in the auction? Come on up. Don't tell me you want to be a grandson? Immediately, a male disciple angrily jumped onto the stage. Yun Chujio first took his spirit stones and then started fighting with him. The familiar formula and the familiar smell. The male disciple fought with Yun Chujio for almost an hour before he was forced off the stage by Yun Chujio. Although Yun Chujio won 2 rounds in a row, Zhao Hu's expression became more and more serious. The 2 rounds added up to nearly 2 hours. Junior sister Yun's physical strength and spirit energy were greatly consumed, and her strength would also decrease. At this time, another male disciple jumped onto the competition stage. He sneered, Yun Chujio, you don't think that you're the only one who has a spiritual pet, do you? Take a look at my spiritual pet. As Qi Dongqiang said that, he released his spiritual pet, which immediately caused a wave of exclamations from below. Oh my god! Senior brother Qi's Chiefeng White Forehead Tiger has actually advanced to the 5th level of spirit connection. This time, Yun Chujio is definitely going to lose. Yun Chujio's 2 giant winged birds are no match for the Chiefeng White-Headed Tiger. Even 10 of them might not be a match for it, let alone 2. Let's see how Yun Chujio is going to show off this time. She will definitely lose miserably. Qi Dongqiang looked at Yun Chujio with a hint of contempt. He deliberately did not rank at the front because he wanted to let someone test Yun Chujio's strength first so that he could ensure his victory. Now that he saw that Yun Chujio was only SOSO, he naturally had a plan in mind, so he confidently stepped onto the competition stage. Yun Chujio glanced at Qi Dongqiang, then at the white-headed tiger with a sudden gust of wind. Then she stretched out her claws and said, "Pass me the spirit stone first. Also, the nameless immortal under my sword, tell me your name." Chapter 39:13. Qi Bulong Dong. When the onlookers saw that Yun Chujio was still thinking about the spiritual stones at this time, they thought to themselves, this person is really willing to sacrifice his life and money. After Qi Dongqiang passed the spiritual stones to Yun Chujio, he said arrogantly, "A man should never change his name and surname, Qi Dongqiang." Yun Chujio frowned. What is Qi? Qi Dongqiang. What Dongqiang? Qi Dongqiang. Qi Dongqiang almost shouted. Ah, what kind of stupid name is so hard to remember? Why don't you just call yourself Qi Bulong Dong Chong 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 Chong? Yun Chujio clapped her hands and said, boom. The audience burst into laughter immediately. It had to be said that this Yun Chujio's words were really interesting. Qi Bulong Dong Chong 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 Chong? Ha, it was so funny. Qi Dongqiang was instantly angered from embarrassment. He gritted his teeth and said, Yun Chujio, don't be so glib. Let's fight to see the truth. Before Qi Dongqiang's voice had faded, the sudden wind white forehead tiger had already pounced towards Yun Chujio. 2 large winged birds quickly came over to stop it. However, their spiritual power was much lower than the sudden wind white forehead tiger. They were immediately forced back by the sudden wind white forehead tiger's wind blades. Moreover, one of the large winged bird's wings was cut by the wind blades and was bleeding. Zhao Hu's heart sank. It was over. It had only been 1 round, and junior sister Yun's spiritual pet was already injured. There was no suspense about the result. Qi Dongqiang also thought the same. He said disdainfully, Yun Chujio, it's still not too late for you to admit defeat now. Otherwise, if my spiritual pet accidentally bites your 2 spiritual pets to death, it won't be my fault. When Yun Chujio saw the injured giant winged bird, a fierce look flashed across her eyes. Comparing spiritual pets with her? Then he'll let you know what it means to be utterly abused. Yun Chujio said coldly, Chi belong, dong dong, I'll give you my original words. If you admit defeat now, I'll spare you and that idiot of yours. Otherwise, my dinner today will be roasted tiger meat. Once Yun Chujio's words left her mouth, not to mention Chi Dongqiang, even that white tiger with a sudden gust of wind was so angry that it was twitching. You're the idiot, your whole family is an idiot. Chi Dongqiang snorted coldly, you overestimate yourself. As he said that, he raised his sword and was about to attack. However, his movements came to an abrupt halt because Yun Chujio had released another giant winged bird. Chi Dongqiang's expression was slightly shocked, but he still said with disdain, 3? Even if it's 10, it's useless. Yun Chujio curled the corners of her lips. Even if it's 10, it's useless? What about 15? As Yun Chujio spoke, she released the giant winged birds. The giant wings of the 15 giant winged birds cast a shadow over the competition stage and the surrounding disciples. Chi Dongqiang's face instantly stiffened. This Yun Chujio really had 15 giant shadow birds. Did she dig out the nest? And why didn't she release them earlier? The fierce-looking white-headed tiger suddenly became a little nervous. If it was in the wild, it naturally wouldn't be afraid of these 15 demonic birds. It could completely use the terrain and the difference in spiritual power to contend with them. It even had the chance to devour them. However, there was no cover on the competition stage. Those demonic birds had the advantage in the air. It was equivalent to being beaten passively. It was probably not their opponent. The disciples watching below the stage were in an uproar. Yun Chujio actually had 15 giant winged birds? Didn't they say that for every spirit pet contracted, a part of their spiritual sense would be occupied? She's contracted 15? And doesn't she have a puppy? How does she do that? Chapter 39:14. I didn't do it voluntarily. Although Chi Dongqiang's confidence was somewhat shaken, once he admitted defeat, he would lose the qualification to participate in this inter-sect selection, so he naturally wouldn't give up like this. He gritted his teeth. Yun Chujio, so what if you have so many spiritual pets? The difference in strength between you and me is enough to make up for the difference in spiritual pets. Watch my sword. Yun Chujio did not dodge. Instead, she used the sword in her hand to block Chi Dongqiang's sword. She curled the corner of her mouth. Chi Belong Dongqiang, are you really going to fight? I can give you another chance. Admit defeat. When Chi Dongqiang heard Yun Chujio call him Chi Belong Dongqiang, the veins on his forehead popped up. He gritted his teeth and said, Admit defeat? In your dreams. Yun Chujio laughed lightly. I forgot to tell you something. Actually, I still have 5 shadow-skimming giant winged birds in my spirit beast bag. As Yun Chujio spoke, she released 5 shadow-skimming giant winged birds. Then she looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. Are you still going to fight? Chi Dongqiang's face instantly turned somewhat pale. If it were not for the competition stage, he might have a chance of winning. However, in the square inch of the competition stage, he was simply a living target. Just when Chi Dongqiang was at a loss as to what to do, Yun Chujio looked at the sudden wind white forehead tiger and said, Little cat, do you still want to fight? If you don't want all your fur to be pecked out, then give it a try. The sudden wind white forehead tiger immediately felt a chill on its body and unconsciously retreated to Chi Dongqiang's side. It didn't want to run away. Chi Dongqiang saw that his spiritual pet was already showing signs of retreating, and knew that even if he reluctantly accepted the challenge, he would definitely be defeated. He gritted his teeth, put away the sudden wind white forehead tiger, and jumped down from the competition stage. The surrounding disciples were not surprised by this. What a joke! Although the flying shadow bird's spiritual power was not high, it occupied the terrain of the competition stage and was 100 times better than demonic beasts. The disciple who was ranked 4th in the auction was afraid that Yun Chujio would let him onto the stage. Just as he was about to escape, a flying shadow bird grabbed his clothes and forcefully dragged him onto the competition stage. The disciple shouted angrily, I didn't volunteer. I didn't want to go on stage. Yun Chujio raised her eyebrows. You didn't volunteer? Didn't you participate in the auction? Since you participated in the auction, it means that you really want to fight with me. Come on then. The disciple was so angry that he was trembling. Fight my ass. He didn't have a spiritual pet, so how could he be Yun Chujio's opponent? Those birds alone could force him off the stage, all right. That disciple was about to defend himself when Yun Chujio said to the people below the stage, "Do you think he is willing? If you think he is not willing, then the few people behind him can come up." When those people heard that, they immediately shouted, "He is willing. Besides, as long as he goes on the stage, he will participate in the competition. It's useless to regret." Yes, junior sister Yun is right. He is willing. That disciple almost vomited blood out of anger. He looked at Manager Song, who was maintaining the order, for help. However, Manager Song acted as if he didn't see it. Apparently, he tacitly agreed that Yun Chujio's action was in accordance with the rules. He gritted his teeth. It seemed that there was no room for negotiation. Even Chi Dongqiang had taken the initiative to admit defeat. What was he going to fight for? Hence, he gritted his teeth and said, "I admit defeat." Yun Chujio nodded her head in satisfaction. Just as the disciple was about to jump off the stage, he heard Yun Chujio faintly say, "Wait, hand over the spirit stones before you go down." Chapter 39:15 laughed like a little fox. That disciple almost wanted to strangle Yun Chujio to death. He was already so miserable, yet he still wanted to extort his spirit stones. Wouldn't her conscience hurt? Yun Chujio counted with her fingers. Including yesterday's match, she had already won 5 matches in a row. She smiled and said to the manager in charge of registration, "Have I passed the first round of selection?" The manager's mouth twitched and he nodded. "Yes, you have passed the first round of selection." After Yun Chujio received a positive answer, she jumped off the stage with a smile and walked to the side of the dumbfounded Zhao Hui. This guy pulled Zhao Hui to the side and asked in a low voice, "Senior brother Zhao Hui, have you not gone on stage yet?" Zhao Hui said in a daze, "Yes, I plan to observe and observe again." Hearing this, Yun Chujio immediately laughed sinisterly, making Zhao Hui's hair stand on end. What did junior sister Yun want to do? "Senior brother Zhao Hui, what are you trembling for? I have a good idea. I will lend you these 20 giant winged birds, and I guarantee you a complete victory." Yun Chujio, this fellow, had always been clear about gratitude and grudges. Since Zhao Hui had helped her, she would naturally return the favor. Zhao Hui was stunned at first, then he said in disbelief, "Junior sister Yun, are you telling the truth?" "Of course it's true. It's more real than pearls." "Don't release them first. Release them when you can't beat them. Also, don't release them all at once. If that's the case, no fool will fall for the bait." Yun Chujio smiled like a little fox. Zhao Hui finally understood why Yun Chujio didn't release so many shadow birds at the beginning. It turned out that she was fishing for fools. This junior sister Yun was simply full of bad water. Zhao Hui was immediately speechless with gratitude. His spiritual power wasn't low to begin with, and with these shadow birds, he would definitely be able to pass the first round of the selection. Zhao Hui's mind was agile, and he immediately walked to the first stage. The reason he chose the first stage was because it was the furthest from the 19th stage, so he didn't fully know what had just happened. It would be more advantageous for him to fish for fools. Hence, Zhao Hui jumped onto the stage and began his performance. Yun Chujio watched from afar while munching on melon seeds. She felt that there was an 80% chance that a new rule would be introduced the next day, which was that spirit beasts were not allowed to be used. But so what? She had plenty of ways to pass the selection. Zhao Hui's spiritual power was not weak to begin with. Coupled with the confidence in his heart, he was able to perform even better. Even without using the giant bird of shadows, he had won 4 disciples in a row. Yun Chujio could not help but nod her head in satisfaction. This Zhao Hui was really a good helper. At this time, a strong and stocky disciple stepped onto the competition stage. That person said arrogantly, "Zhao Hui, Although your spiritual power is not bad, you are not my match at all. You deserve your bad luck for meeting me. Go down. At this time, Zhao Hui was extremely grateful to Yun Chujio. If she had not lent him the giant winged birds, he would not have been a match for this disciple in front of him. Thinking of this, Zhao Hui didn't waste any time and directly released the 20 giant wing skimmers that Yun Chujio lent him. The sturdy disciple was so scared that he staggered and almost sat on the ground. He had heard that Yun Chujio had won the competition with a group of giant wing skimmers. Why did this Zhao Hui have so many giant wing skimmers? His face turned ashen. There was no need for this competition anymore. Chapter 39:16. Making money in the end, the stocky disciple hopped off the stage dejectedly. He could only look forward to the next year's battle. Zhao Hui walked off the stage happily. Just as he was about to say a few words of gratitude to Yun Chujio, he noticed that Yun Chujio was walking towards the stage. Zhao Hui was dumbfounded. What was junior sister Yun trying to do? The surrounding disciples were also confused. They heard that Yun Chujio had already passed the first round of the selection. Why was she on the stage again? Yun Chujio looked at the people below the stage with a smile and said, "Everyone, did you all see that? Senior brother Zhao Hu's shadow-skimming giant winged bird is my spiritual pet. He spent 10,000 high-grade spirit stones to rent it from me. Who else wants to rent it? You have to know that with these 20 shadow birds, one of your feet has already stepped into the inner sect. Such a good opportunity is not always available. After this village, there won't be such a shop anymore." Everyone was stunned at first, then their eyes shone with a burning light. They could actually do this? Yun Chujio was right. With this shadow bird, they would definitely be able to pass the first round of the selection. They naturally could not let go of such a good opportunity. Thus, one by one, they scrambled to rent Yun Chujio's giant birds. Yun Chujio pretended to be troubled and frowned. "I only have 20 giant birds, but with so many of you, who should I rent it to? How about this? You guys bid and the highest bidder will get it." Thus, the first stage instantly became the auction stage, and it became a mess. Upon receiving the news, Manager Song's head was buzzing. He originally thought that Yun Chujio would stop after passing the first round of selection. Who would have thought that she would actually run to the number 1 arena to cause trouble? By the time Manager Song arrived, Yun Chujio had already accepted a disciple's 50,000 high-grade spirit stones. She was munching on melon seeds as she watched that disciple run to another arena to flaunt his might. Manager Song was completely speechless. This person had even earned a fortune by participating in the selection. There was no one else. However, there was no rule that forbade the use of spirit beasts, and there was no rule that forbade the loaning of spirit beasts. She could only watch helplessly as she took advantage of the loophole. Zhao Hui, on the other hand, looked at Yun Chujio with a dumbfounded expression. So junior sister Yun lent him the shadow-skimming giant winged bird for this purpose? Those shadow-skimming giant wings birds were even more miserable. How did they become the little girl's tool to earn money? Yun Chujio coldly said with her spiritual sense, "All of your food and drinks are mine. So what if I use you to earn some money? Do you still want to find a nest to settle down in?" Those shadow-skimming giant wings birds bitterly thought, "It has been so damn long. You should find a place for us to settle down." Yun Chujio thought that she would make a huge profit, but she didn't expect Manager Song to announce a new rule that night. Disciples were not allowed to use spirit beasts, and Yun Chujio's plan to make money was aborted. After another 2 days, the first round of selection finally ended, and the second round of selection began. The second round of selection was even crueler. 10 people were randomly chosen as a group, and in each group, only 2 people would win, and the rest would all be eliminated. Yun Chujio looked at the composition of her group. Other than Zhao Hui, she did not know anyone else, and she did not know how strong they were. Just as Yun Chujio was about to leave, Zhao Hui said to her dejectedly, "Junior sister Yun, follow me." Yun Chujio knew that something bad must have happened when she saw Zhao Hu's expression. She frowned and followed him to his courtyard. Zhao Hui let out a long sigh. "Junior sister Yun, I'm afraid we won't be able to pass the second round of the selection." Chapter 39:17, Second Round Selection. Yun Chujio raised her eyebrows. Why do you say that? Zhao Hui gave a wry smile. The other 8 people in the group are all direct descendants of Martial Uncle One. What do you think they will do? They will work together to get rid of us at the first moment, and then finally decide who will advance. Of course, they may have already decided who will advance, but it's just for show. How could we possibly be a match for 8 people? Moreover, spiritual beasts and spiritual pets are no longer allowed to be used. We have no way of passing the second round of the selection. Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment. Then, she chuckled and said, I thought it was something important. It's just a small matter. It's almost lunchtime. I'm not going to talk nonsense with you anymore. I have to go back to the courtyard to eat. Zhao Hu's heart was like a dog that was bickering. You're a pig. At this time, you still want to eat lunch. Of course, he only dared to mutter these words in his heart. He watched Yun Chujio leave as if nothing had happened. Zhao Hui sat on the chair dejectedly. He must have been implicated by junior sister Yun, which was why he put him and junior sister Yun in the same group. However, what was the use of saying this now? Since he had already decided to follow junior sister Yun, he naturally had to bear the loss of failure, so he could only grit his teeth and endure it. On the other side, Yun Chujio returned to the dormitory. The reason why she had rushed back to the dormitory, thousands of miles away, was because if she and Zhao Hui had lunch together and neglected a certain venerable would go on a hunger strike. Yun Chujio also released her spiritual pets and let them have fun in the courtyard. The kitten rolled its eyes and moved closer to Yun Chujio and asked, Master, how do you plan to pass the second round of the selection? The 2 of you are probably not a match for the 8 of them. Unfortunately, spiritual pets are not allowed now, or else I would be able to contribute. Although the cat cub said that, he was secretly gloating. This smelly girl might be beaten to death by those people. That's great. Yun Chujio glanced at the cat cub. It's a piece of cake. I have 100 ways to pass the selection. However, in order to praise your enthusiasm, I'll reward you with 2 dried fish. The cat cub's face was soon filled with tears. Because it was too damn salty. This stupid girl must have done it on purpose. Buttface curled his lips. Idiot. You still want to play tricks with the little fairy? I'll play you to death. Can't you see that even the one who was arguing with the heaven and earth has to submit obediently? You kittens still want to rebel? You are really courting death. Early the next morning, Yun Chujio did not laze around and arrived at the selection venue on time. The original 20 competition stages had been replaced by 5 even larger ones so that the 10 of them could perform. Each competition stage was surrounded by disciples. Yun Chujio found the corresponding second competition stage, and Zhao Hui came over with a pair of dark circles under his eyes. Yun Chujio looked at Zhao Hui and knew that he probably did not sleep the whole night. She could not help but ask in amusement, Senior brother Zhao, did you not sleep the whole night? It's not a big deal. Do you have to be so worried? Zhao Hui was about to cry. It's not a big deal? If the selection of inner disciples was not a big deal, then it was not a big deal. As the 2 of them were talking, people had already stepped onto the competition stage. The manager in charge also began to urge Yun Chujio and Zhao Hui to step onto the stage. After Yun Chujio jumped onto the competition stage, she realized that the other 8 disciples who were participating in the selection were looking at her and Zhao Hui with malicious intentions, just like a cat looking at a mouse. Yun Chujio curled her lips. It was not certain who was the cat. Chapter 39:18 was a disgrace when the steward in charge of supervising the competition saw that everyone had arrived. He read out the rules once more and indicated that they could begin. Once the steward announced the start, the 8 people surrounded Yun Chujio and Zhao Hui with malicious intentions. It was obvious that they intended to directly eliminate the 2 of them. Zhao Hui gritted his teeth and said to Yun Chujio, Junior sister Yun, a wise man does not suffer losses in front of his eyes. Why don't we give up? Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. Give up? She had never known how to write these 2 words. She took out a gas mask from her storage ring and handed it to Zhao Hui. If you don't want to be eliminated, put this on. Zhao Hui was stunned at first. What was this weird thing for? However, he was quick-witted. When he saw Yun Chujio put it on, he immediately remembered that Yun Chujio had thrown the chili noodles at the mine in the Fallen Goose Mountain Villa. This thing should be to prevent choking on the chili noodles, right? Therefore, he immediately put on the gas mask according to Yun Chujio's appearance. Almost as soon as he put on the mask, Yun Chujio threw 2 big sacks at the 8 people. The big sacks fell to the ground, and the pepper mask inside flew in all directions. Not to mention the 8 people, even the manager in charge of the competition and the disciples watching below were choked to tears. The surrounding disciples were furious. This Yun Chujio was simply too evil. Who had they provoked when they were just watching a show? They had actually suffered such an undeserved disaster. They had originally sympathized with her, but now they were eager for her to lose. Thus, one by one, they coughed and shouted, "Yun Chujio, you are so evil. You will lose without a doubt. Yeah, if you don't lose, it's simply intolerable to the heavens. Defeat Yun Chujio. Eliminate Yun Chujio." The corner of Zhao Hu's eyes twitched. Junior sister Yun's ability to gain hatred points was unprecedented. There was an 80% chance that she would never be able to do so again. However, the most important thing now was not to think about these things. They had to act quickly. Yun Chujio and Zhao Hu's ultimate goal was not to kill the 8 people. They only needed to force them off the stage. Therefore, they had a purpose to force the 8 people to dodge to the edge of the stage. The 8 people choked and felt the sword chi of Yun Chujio and Zhao Hui. Naturally, they wanted to hide. However, their eyes were blurry and they could not see anything. 3 people fell off the stage in a daze. The remaining 5 people reacted after a while. They splashed water on each other and finally regained their sight. Their eyes that were red from the choking of the chili looked at Yun Chujio and Zhao Hui fiercely. Zhao Hui was still uncertain. Although there were only 5 people left, there were still 3 more than them. Moreover, they had already set up their spiritual energy shields. It was useless for Yun Chujio to throw the chili. Yun Chujio, put away your tricks. With the spiritual energy shields, even poison is useless, let alone the chili. Just wait to be eliminated. A short and fat man said fiercely. The disciples watching below also jeered. They wished they could go up to the stage and help the 5 people defeat Yun Chujio and Zhao Hui. Zhao Hu's heart was like a bawling dog. He, Zhao Hui, had always been on good terms with the people in the lower house, but now he had become the target of everyone. At this moment, he heard Yun Chujio beside him chuckle, "Poison is useless? Then does this thing work?" Zhao Hui turned his head and saw Yun Chujio holding a thick stack of talismans. Chapter 39:19 is lying to you. Zhao Hui turned his head and saw that Yun Chujio was holding a level 23 high-grade earth-shattering talisman. The nameless sword sect valued swordsmanship, so there were very few talisman masters in the sect. Many of the talismans in the exchange pavilion were purchased from outside, and the quality of the talismans was not high either. Although there were also level 23 earth-shattering talismans inside, they were not cheap. Very few disciples would buy them, let alone such a thick stack. It was estimated that these things were also very rare in the southern continent. How could junior sister Yun have so many of them? The short fatty and the others also saw the talismans in Yun Chujio's hands. They took a few steps back in shock and said with a terrified expression, You can't use talismans." Yun Chujio laughed lightly. "Which rule says you can't use the talisman? Since there's no rule, then you can use it if you want. Come, today is a good day, let's make some noise to celebrate." Shorty and the others were all fuming. Celebrate? Celebrate my ass. Where did this wretched girl get so many shocking explosive talismans? Oh right, she used to be the female emperor of Fenghua. Naturally, she had some good treasures. What should they do now? Do you want to be blown up by me or admit defeat? I'll give you 3 seconds. If you don't admit defeat, then I'll have to make some noise. If you're worried that the noise won't be loud enough, I still have a lot of them here. Yun Chujio took out a thick stack of talismans with her left hand as she spoke, and then she said coldly, 1, 2, admit defeat. Admit defeat. We admit defeat. The short fatty and the others were afraid that Yun Chujio, this madman, would really blow them to death, so they quickly admitted defeat. She had 40 to 50 heaven-shaking explosive talismans in her hands. If they were really smashed onto their bodies, they would be blown to pieces. Yun Chujio looked at the steward. They admitted defeat. Did we advance? That's right. You and Zhao Hui advanced. The other 8 will be eliminated. The manager wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He thought to himself that it was fortunate that the 5 disciples admitted defeat. Otherwise, Yun Chujio would really throw out all the heaven-shaking explosive talismans in her hands. He had to jump off the competition stage to hide. This Yun Chujio was simply a lunatic. When the short and fat man and the other 3 saw that the results had been announced, they were about to jump off the competition stage dejectedly when they heard Yun Chujio's clear smile. It was a very proud smile. Hey, idiots, actually, I only have the sky-shattering explosive talisman at the top in my hand. The rest are all low-level sudden rupture talismans. You guys are really cowardly. You were deceived by me. Don't you idiots think about it? If all of you are really sky-shattering explosive talismans, we are so close to each other. Even if we can blow you all to death, Senior Brother Zhao and I will also be affected. How could I be so stupid? There are idiots every year, and this year there are especially many. With your intelligence, you still want to gang up on me? You are simply overestimating yourselves. I'm warning you, if you still dare to provoke me in the future, I will kill all of you. The short fatty and the others were so angry that they almost spat out a mouthful of blood. They had actually been deceived. They had actually been fooled by this smelly girl. When Zhao Hui saw the short fatty and the others were so angry that they were about to spit out blood, the corners of his eyes twitched. Junior Sister Yun was really mean. If you lied to them, then so be it. Why did you still tell them the truth? Wasn't this deliberately to anger them? The reason why Yun Chujio said this was partly because of her wicked taste. On the other hand, if everyone knew that she had a lot of earth-shattering explosive talismans, how would she cheat people in the future? However, it was estimated that there would be a rule that forbade the use of talismans very soon. What about the 3rd round of the selection? Chapter 39 20 Sword Light Formation. The short fatty and the others were so angry that they were gnashing their teeth. However, the results had already been announced. No matter how unwilling they could only jump off the stage with a livid expression. Yun Chujio glanced at the disciples below the stage. Who was the one who fought to eliminate me just now? They said that they were going to beat me up? If you have the ability, come out and fight me one-on-one. The disciples below all lowered their heads and did not say a word. One-on-one? If you have the ability, then put away those giant winged birds. If you have the ability, then put away that spiritual beast of yours. Is this a fucking one-on-one? Is this a group fight? Zhao Hui was speechless and said in a low voice, Junior Sister Yun, we still have to go back and prepare for the 3rd round of the selection. Stop fooling around. Yun Chujio glanced at him. We still don't know what the content of the 3rd round is. It's useless to prepare. Why don't we play here for a while? Zhao Hui clenched his teeth. Junior Sister Yun, it's almost lunchtime. Aren't you hungry? Yun Chujio immediately put away her spiritual beast and the shadow-sweeping giant winged bird. Then, she jumped off the stage and ran faster than a rabbit. Zhao Hui, he knew it. In Junior Sister Yun's heart, this inner sect disciple selection could not even be compared to lunch. Yun Chujio returned to her own courtyard and took out the small silver snake from her sleeve pocket. Then she shamelessly kissed it a few times. Little baby, are you hungry? I will feed you lunch right away. A certain lord was already numb to this. His pair of vertical pupils calmly glanced at Yun Chujio before he continued to use his spirit energy to break the seal. He finally understood. If he still didn't think of a way to break the seal, he would be played to death by this little scoundrel. After lunch, Yun Chujio cupped her chin and pondered about the 3rd round of the selection. After thinking for a long time, she still couldn't come up with a reason, so she simply didn't think about it anymore. Anyway, when the time came, there would always be a solution. That evening, as expected, there was a new rule that banned the use of poisons and talismans during the selection in the future. It was most likely to prevent Yun Chujio from having any other tricks up her sleeve, so she added a few more items, such as formations, secret arts, and puppets. None of them were allowed to be used. Yun Chujio could not help but feel a headache coming on. This had blocked her way of outsmarting her. She was afraid that the third round would be difficult. Another day passed, and the second round of the selection was over. The contents of the third round of the selection were also announced. When Yun Chujio saw it, she heaved a sigh of relief. She had thought that it was something else, but it turned out to be a sword light array. This was easy to handle. When she had challenged the path to heaven with a narrow escape, she had relied on her sword intent to make it through. This time, there shouldn't be any problems. Zhao Hui also knew that Yun Chujio had grasped the sword intent of chaos, so he also heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that she should be able to pass smoothly. The next day, the third round of the selection began. The sword light array was set on the open space under the sword pool. A small portion of the sword light from the sword pool was directly drawn into the sword light array to test the sword skills of the disciples participating in the selection. The results of the test were calculated according to the length of time each disciple stayed in the sword light array. The longer they stayed in the sword light array, the higher their results would be. However, the manager in charge of the test specially emphasized that if they could not withstand it in the sword light array, they could activate their identity jade token. This way they would be sent out. They must not try to be brave. In the end, the manager even deliberately glanced at Yun Chujio and said, "In the sword light array, one can only use sword techniques. If someone violates the rules by using spirit beasts, talismans, and other supporting measures, they will be directly disqualified from the selection." Chapter 39:21 Power of the Sword Light Array. Yun Chujio cursed in her heart. These words were meant for her to hear, but inside the sword light array, they couldn't see it. So what if they used it? It was most likely that they had guessed what Yun Chujio was thinking. The manager said coldly, "Some disciples shouldn't take any chances. This sword light array has specially designed a restriction. If anyone uses anything other than sword techniques, they will be killed by the array." The disciples participating in the selection felt a chill in their hearts. This was not a joke. This sword light array was connected to the sword pool. If they were said to kill a person, even killing them would be a piece of cake. "Now, we will start the selection according to the order of my name. Yuan Qi, you can go in." The manager read out the name list. Yuan Qi did not expect to be the first to read out his name. He was a little nervous, but he could only brace himself and enter the sword light array. Seeing Yuan Qi enter, the steward signaled the disciples who were in charge of the array to activate the array. Although everyone could not see the situation inside the array, they could hear the sound of the collision between the sword light and the treasure sword. They could not help but feel a little nervous. Everyone thought that Yuan Qi would have to hold on for at least 15 minutes before he came out. They did not expect that Yuan Qi would be teleported out in less than 15 minutes. His body was already covered in blood. Even his face had a deep cut from the sword light, making him look extremely horrifying. Yuan Qi's face was very pale. Half of the reason was because he had lost too much blood, and the other half was because he felt that he might not have any hope of passing the third round of the selection. After all, he had been in the sword light array for too short a time. The steward did not even look at Yuan Qi and continued to recite the name of the second disciple. That disciple walked into the sword light array nervously. No one had expected that the disciple had stayed even shorter than Yuan Qi and was soon teleported out. He was also covered in injuries and was in a sorry state. The third disciple, the fourth disciple. Yun Chujio looked at him coldly. She thought to herself that this sword light array seemed to be much more powerful than the sword light array of the road to heaven with a slim chance of survival. Just as she was thinking, Yuan Qi, who had already taken the hemostasis pill, walked to her side and said in a low voice, "Junior Sister Yun, there are 2 sword lights shooting out from the front, back, left, and right of the array. Only there are no sword lights above. You should be more careful when the time comes. Yun Chujio knew that Yuan Qi was trying to be friendly. She smiled and thanked him. She thought to herself that she could still use the sword techniques on the cliff, so the third round of the selection should not be a problem. Most of the disciples who went in later did not last long, and there were only a few people who surpassed Yuan Qi. Yuan Qi's expression immediately relaxed a lot. It seemed that he still had a chance to pass the third round of the selection. Yun Chujio was initially very interested, but she felt bored just by looking at it, so she took out the recliner and lay on it to bask in the sun. Of course, this guy was not honest either. His hand would occasionally reach into his sleeve pocket to play with the little silver snake. He was having a lot of fun. When it was Zhao Hui and Mu Jiang's turn to go in, Yun Chujio's expression became more serious. Seeing that both of their results were slightly better than Yuan Qi's, she estimated that it would not be a big problem for them to pass the third round of the selection, so she was even more relaxed. It was not until the evening that it was Yun Chujio's turn. Before Yun Chujio entered, the manager read out the rules that forbade the use of talismans again. Hei Xinjiu was so angry that she was twitching. She thought to herself, it's not that she has a bad memory, why would she need to emphasize it again? Chapter 39:22 Devouring Sword Light. After Yun Chujio entered the sword light array, the disciple in charge of the array activated the array. Yun Chujio immediately set up the spiritual energy barrier and took out a treasured sword from her storage ring to observe the situation around her. While she was watching, 2 sword lights shot over from the front, back, left, and right. Yun Chujio suddenly jumped up and dodged the first wave of attacks. When she fell down, another wave of sword lights shot over. She had to use her sword to hit the sword lights that were shooting over. Soon, almost 15 minutes had passed. Because Yun Chujio knew the results of the people before her, she planned to hold on for a few more rounds before activating her identity jade token. This way, she could ensure that she could pass the third round of the test. At this moment, a sword light suddenly shot out from the top of her head and the ground. Yun Chujio was shocked. Fortunately, she was very agile and managed to dodge it. Yun Chujio frowned. Didn't they say that there were no sword lights above and below? Why did it suddenly appear? However, she thought that Yuan Qi had not stayed in the sword light array for a long time. It was understandable that he had not waited for the sword lights above and below to be activated. After all, the difficulty of the test would increase with time. Yun Chujio held on for a while more. She felt that it was almost time, so she activated her identity jade token. However, there was no response. Yun Chujio tried a few more times, but there was still no response. The first thought that flashed through her mind was that she had been fucking tricked. No wonder she was ranked last. It was convenient for her to do something. Although she could still hold on for now, she was not made of iron. Wouldn't she be shot into a porcupine in the end? To say the least, if she wanted to go out, she could use the talisman to blow up the sword light array. But if that happened, wouldn't she lose the qualification to advance? No wonder the manager had always stressed that other means were prohibited. It turned out that it was all premeditated. How shameless! Just as Yun Chujio was cursing in her heart, the 2 sword lights in one direction turned into 4, and the frequency was even faster. Yun Chujio was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She could only use the sword techniques on the cliff wall to barely hold on for a while more. However, the 4 sword lights quickly turned into 8 again. The sword lights from all directions were shooting at her like a rain of swords. Yun Chujio was so angry that she was twitching. This was forcing her to blow up the place. Was she tricked just like that? So she could only give up the qualification to participate in the selection. At this moment, a certain person in the sleeve pocket reminded her, "Little Gio, didn't you say that the big kitchen knife once swallowed the sword lights in the sword pool? Why don't you use the big kitchen knife?" Before the certain person could say anything, Hei Xinjiu's eyes suddenly lit up. "Damn it, it'll make all the sword lights in the sword pool disappear today if I ask you to set me up. It'll make you have no place to cry." This guy immediately took out the big kitchen knife and put it on the ground. He said fiercely, "Little vegetable, Devour all the sword lights for me. Don't leave any for them. A red light flashed on the big kitchen knife. Immediately, the sword lights that were originally shooting at Yun Chujio in the sword light array rushed into the big kitchen knife. Moreover, it was the kind that competed to be first. Yun Chujio looked at the big kitchen knife that was continuously swallowing the sword light and smiled sinisterly. She was worried that she would not be able to feed the big kitchen knife, but she did not expect that someone would take the initiative to help. At first, she thought that letting the big kitchen knife swallow the sword light was a little unethical. Now that it had taken the initiative to deliver itself to her, she naturally would not be polite. Chapter 39-23. Out-of-control sword light array. Yun Chujio looked at the large kitchen knife swallowing the sword light and said to a certain someone, "Little baby, thank you for reminding me. I'll give you extra food tonight." A certain someone couldn't be bothered with her. Did he care about his appetite? A certain someone had completely forgotten how he was jealous of Buttface's flesh and bones back then. Yun Chujio was so happy that she couldn't be happier. The steward outside and the disciples who were waiting for the result were all dumbfounded. Why hadn't Yun Chujio come out for such a long time? Her spiritual power was much lower than theirs. Even if she had comprehended a type of sword intent, there was no reason for her to be able to persist for such a long time. Moreover, as time passed, the difficulty of the sword light array would increase. How could Yun Chujio, who was only at the 3rd level of spiritual link, persist for such a long time? The steward remembered what Elder One had told him and could not help but panic. Yun Chujio's identity jade token could not be activated. If she wanted to live, she had to use other methods. The reason why the sword light array was abnormal. Was it because it was killing her? But she was only at the 3rd level of psychic power. How could she need so many sword lights to kill her? Moreover, the formation was operating normally. It didn't look like it was going to kill her. What was going on? At this moment, a disciple suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my God! Oh my God! Look, why are the sword lights from the sword pool crazily rushing into the sword light formation?" Hearing this, everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sword pool. They saw the sword lights from the sword pool continuously pouring into the sword light formation. At this moment, even a fool could see that there was a problem with the sword light array. The steward jumped up and shouted, "Quick! Quickly shut down the sword light array." How could he still care about the orders of the 10,000 elders? If there was a problem with the sword pool, the consequences would be unimaginable. The disciple in charge hurriedly shut down the sword light array. However, he realized that the sword light array could not be shut down. "Manager, it can't be closed. What should we do?" The disciple cried out. Manager and was immediately drenched in cold sweat. Yun Chujio's death by the sword light was nothing. After all, it was just an accident. However, if there was a problem with the sword light in the sword pool, even Elder One could not protect him. He kicked the disciple aside and personally went to shut down the sword light array. However, after a long time, he still could not shut down the sword light array. The sword light array had completely gone out of control. Manager Song, who was in charge of maintaining order, saw the situation and frowned. He quickly reported the matter to the higher-ups of the sect. Manager Li of the sword pool had also received the report. He was so anxious that he was about to hit the wall. If the sword pool was destroyed, his future would also be ruined. However, there was no other way. He could only wait for the elders in charge of the array formation to come over and close the array formation. Otherwise, there would not be any sword lights left in the sword pool. Among these people, only Zhao Hui and Zhang Li were worried about Yun Chujio's safety. The rest of them could not care about Yun Chujio's life. Soon, Master Ouyang and the higher-ups of the sect rushed over. The sword pool was the foundation of the Nameless Sword sect, and it was the most important thing. How could they dare to neglect it? After everyone arrived, the first thing they did was to ask Elder Ma, who designed the sword light array, to turn off the sword light array. Elder Ma operated the sword light array with sweat all over his forehead for a while, but he still could not turn it off. He even took out the spiritual stones in the core of the array, but he still could not stop the sword light from pouring into the sword light array. Chapter 39:24. Destroy the sword light array. Elder Ma's hands couldn't help but tremble. After he had finished designing the sword light array, Elder One found him and made him do something inside. He wanted to think of a way to make Yun Chujia's identity jade token fail. He had a good relationship with Elder One, and he was greedy for the reward that Elder One promised, so he did something to the sword light array. Could it be that it was because of this that the sword light array went out of control? Master Ouyang saw that Ma still could not shut down the sword light array, and the sword light in the sword pool continued to pour into the sword light array. He was almost driven mad with anxiety. Elder One did not expect the situation to be like this. However, Yun Chujio should have already died in the sword light array. This was not bad. However, in order to ensure that it was just in case, he had better send her on another journey. Hence, he said to Master Ouyang, "Master, there is only one way to solve the current predicament. That is for us to work together to destroy the sword light array. Otherwise, the sword light in the sword pool will be exhausted." Elder Gu frowned, but Yun Chujio is still inside. If we destroy the sword light array and something goes wrong, wouldn't that little girl lose her life? Elder One thought to himself, he just wanted to kill that little girl. It would be better if she died. He immediately retorted, "This is an urgent matter. We can't care too much now. It's not the worst that the sword light has been exhausted. If the sword pool is also destroyed in the end, the foundation of our nameless sword sect will be gone. Master, you can't be merciful now. Make a decision as soon as possible." Master Ouyang was in a dilemma. On one hand, he really didn't want anything to happen to Yun Chujio. It wasn't that he had much love for Yun Chujio, but that Yun Chujio was still valuable. It would be a pity if she died just like that. However, if he didn't destroy the sword light array and the sword pool was destroyed in his hands, he would be a sinner of the nameless sword sect. At this moment, Elder Dongfang took a step forward and said, "Sect Master, why don't you give the order to destroy the sword light array?" To take a step back, if that little girl was still alive, she would probably be trapped in the sword light array and unable to come out. If we destroy the sword light array, we will also be saving her. Master Ouyang was suddenly enlightened. That's right. He was also confused. If he did not destroy the sword light array, that little girl would not be able to come out either. However, his eyes flashed and he said to Elder One, "Elder One, you and Elder Duanmu are responsible for protecting the disciples behind you. In case anything unexpected happens, I will personally bring people to complete the task of destroying the sword light array." Elder One sneered in his heart. He knew that Master Ouyang was afraid that he would do something when he destroyed the sword light array. If Yun Chujio was not dead, he would accidentally kill her. However, he was sure that Yun Chujio was most likely dead. Moreover, even if she wasn't dead, something might happen if he destroyed the sword light array. She wouldn't be able to survive. Therefore, he didn't say anything. He followed Master Ouyang's arrangement and stood in front of the disciples with Elder Duanmu. Master Ouyang immediately gave the order to destroy the sword light array. He, Elder Gu, and the others summoned their swords and slashed at the sword light array. Inside the sword light array, Hei Xinjiu was smiling as she watched the big kitchen knife swallow the sword light. Suddenly, she felt that the array was becoming unstable, and her heart tightened. She immediately guessed the general situation. It was probably because the abnormality of the sword pool had attracted the attention of Old Man Ouyang and the others. Could it be that they wanted to destroy the sword light array? Were they planning to destroy her as well? Chapter 39:25. My pot. Yun Chujio hurriedly said to the large kitchen knife, "Small dish, don't eat it. If you continue eating, your master will die." The large kitchen knife seemed to understand Yun Chujio's words and flew back to Yun Chujio's hand. Yun Chujio quickly put the large kitchen knife back into her storage ring. She blinked her eyes and took out some cold water to pour on her body, creating the illusion that she was sweating from exhaustion. This guy originally wanted to cut a few more times on her body, but, he couldn't bear to do it. Almost as soon as Yun Chujio put the big kitchen knife back into her storage ring, the sword light in the sword pool stopped gushing out. A moment later, the sword light array was also destroyed by Master Ouyang and the others. "Hold the sword! Hold the sword!" A heart-wrenching cry came from the destroyed sword light array. Master Ouyang and the others quickly stopped. They saw a big iron pot in the middle of the destroyed sword light array. It had been cut several times by the sword chi, and the voice came from inside. Just when everyone was bewildered, the big iron pot was overturned to the side. Who could it be if it wasn't He Xinjiao who came out? After putting away the big kitchen knife, this guy was afraid of being accidentally hurt by Master Ouyang and the others. In a moment of panic, he thought of the big iron pot, so he hid himself inside. Of course, the big metal pot was not of much use. In fact, she hid inside the Great Void Mystic Realm until Mao Mao Chiu told her that the sword light array had been broken, and then she came out of the Great Void Mirror. The big metal pot was just to fool people. This fellow cursed the Great Void Mirror in her heart. Every time she came out, she had to suck her blood, the shameless little Jingjing. If she had no other choice, she wouldn't even bother to go in. Yun Chujio didn't pay a visit to Master Ouyang at the first moment. Instead, she threw herself onto the big iron pot and howled in grief, "My pot! My precious big iron pot! If it wasn't for you, I would have died. But now that you have been shot like this, my heart hurts. I have let you down. Don't worry, you'll definitely find the best refiner to repair you. My wok." Everyone was dumbfounded. What was going on? Especially Elder One. Other than Yun Chujio's pale face and drenched in sweat, there was nothing wrong with her. She was so angry that she was about to faint. So many sword lights had poured into the sword light array in the sword pool, but she still didn't manage to shoot this smelly girl to death? Could it be that the broken metal pot in her hand was some kind of incredible treasure? He suddenly recalled that he seemed to have heard someone mention that Yun Chujio seemed to have carried a huge metal pot on her back when she went to the ancestral master's cave abode. When she came out, she even brought out the huge metal pot on purpose. Could it be that there was really something amazing about this metal pot? It was obvious that Master Ouyang and the others thought the same as well. Their gazes fell on the huge metal pot. Could it be that this huge metal pot really contributed to the little brat's survival? Elder Dongfang immediately looked at the big metal pot with a burning gaze. He was an elder of the sword forging hall of the upper house, so he was naturally very interested in refining weapons. He immediately ignored his status and squatted beside Yun Chujio. He looked at the big metal pot carefully. However, when he took a look, he could not help but be very disappointed. This big metal pot was used to cook rice and boil water in the kitchen. There was nothing unusual about it at all. He thought about it again. Perhaps because it had suffered a serious injury, the big iron pot had lost its original strangeness. It was a pity. Now that it had become so dilapidated, it would be useless even if it was repaired. Yun Chujio wiped her tears while secretly observing the expressions of the crowd. When she saw that they were all focused on the big iron pot, she silently praised herself in her heart. This big iron pot was indeed the best choice to take the blame. Chapter 39-26 The fight between deities and ghosts. While He Xinjiao was secretly feeling proud, Elder One said coldly, "Yun Chujio, did you do something in the sword light array that caused the sword light array to go out of control? What are your intentions?" Elder Wan's words made everyone shift their attention from the big metal pot to Yun Chujio. Yes, why did the sword light array suddenly go out of control? Furthermore, under so many sword lights, why was Yun Chujio safe and sound? Could it really be her doing? Yun Chujio used her sleeve to wipe away her tears, her face full of grievance and indignation. Elder Wan's words are so heartless. What can a good-for-nothing like me, who is at the third layer of insight, do to cause the sword light array to lose control? I'm the biggest victim, alright? Previously, I was unable to activate my identity jade token in the array no matter what. If it wasn't for my big metal pot, I'm afraid that I would have been shot into a sieve by now. Sect Master, in order to prove my innocence and to seek justice, I beg you to thoroughly investigate this matter. Manager and has always emphasized to me that I shouldn't use any other means, or else I would be backfired by the array. It's obvious that he knows some inside information. As long as you interrogate him, you will definitely be able to obtain useful clues. When Elder One heard Yun Chujia's words, he couldn't help but feel a little frustrated. He had lost his mind. Wasn't this bringing trouble upon himself? However, the words that he had said had spilled water, and there was no way for him to salvage it. He could only glance at the pale-faced manager and, full of threats and warnings. Manager and was so regretful that his intestines had turned green. If he had known this would happen, he would not have hinted to Yun Chujio to use other methods. He was afraid that after much investigation, he would be the scapegoat for this matter. After all, something big had happened, and someone had to take the blame. Master Ouyang also felt that Yun Chujio, a little girl, did not have that much ability. Moreover, looking at her and Manager An's expressions, he could tell that Manager An's face was pale, and it was obvious that she had a guilty conscience, and the little girl did not have the slightest bit of guilt other than feeling wronged and indignant. Master Ouyang immediately ordered the people of the discipline hall to arrest Manager In and interrogate him severely. Master Ouyang glanced at Elder Ma again without leaving a trace and said indifferently, "Elder Ma, you are the designer of this sword light array. I hope you can take the initiative to cooperate with me where I need your cooperation." Elder Ma agreed hesitantly. He knew that even if Master Ouyang wouldn't do anything to him, he had already planted the seed of doubt. His future days would be miserable. Yun Chujia's eyes flashed. It seemed that the only unlucky person in the end would be Managerin. It was really a fight between immortals. Master Ouyang and the others were most concerned about the situation in the sword pool. When they came to the edge of the sword pool and looked down, their hearts turned cold. The sword light in the sword pool was only a quarter of what it was at its peak. It would take at least 20 to 30 years for it to recover to its peak. Even Elder One's expression was a little ugly. The sword pool was the foundation of the sect. After the sword light was reduced, it would have a great impact on the disciples' cultivation. The strength of the nameless sword sect would probably plummet. After a deathly silence, Elder Gu sighed and said, "Everyone right now, our nameless sword sect can be said to be in the most difficult situation. I think it's better to make the sword forging method public. Only in this way can we increase the number of precious swords in a short period of time. Otherwise, the sword light in this sword pool will not be able to maintain the sect's daily needs." Chapter 39:27 Killing Intent. When Elder Gu said this, even Elder Duanmu of the number 1 sword forging hall of the upper house, who usually objected the most vehemently, did not object. This was because everyone knew that if the nameless sword sect were to decline, everyone in the sect would be implicated. Naturally, they would abandon their petty thoughts. Seeing this, Master Ouyang nodded and said, "All right, in that case, let's return to the meeting hall to discuss this matter." Just as everyone was about to leave, Yun Chujio went up to Master Ouyang and said, "Master Ouyang, I passed the 3rd round of the selection, right? After all, you know my swordsmanship. If not for this unexpected disaster, I would have definitely gotten 1st place." The corner of Master Ouyang's eyes twitched. He was not in the mood to talk to this guy anymore. He immediately asked Manager Tong, who would take over the assessment, to put Yun Chujio on the list of people who would advance. Yun Chujio was satisfied and naturally would not ask for trouble. She hugged the big metal pot and whined for a while before putting away the big metal pot. She wiped her tears and left the sword pool. Zhao Hui, Zhang Li, and the others wanted to comfort her, but Yun Chujio said that she was too sad and needed to go back to the courtyard alone to heal the wounds in her heart. They could only watch Yun Chujio wipe her tears and leave. After Yun Chujio returned to the courtyard, she could not wait to take out her big kitchen knife. She did not look closely because the time was too short. She did not know what would happen after the big kitchen knife swallowed so many sword lights. Would it become very awesome? Unfortunately, Yun Chujio looked over and found that the cracks on the big kitchen knife had disappeared. Other than that, there was no other change. This foodie looked like it would need to swallow a lot of sword lights to recover, but she couldn't really let it swallow all the sword lights in the sword pool, right? That seemed a little immoral. At this time, the sky was completely dark. After eating dinner, Yun Chujio laid on the bed and straightened her body. She had been very tired in the sword light array today, and she was very nervous. Now that she had relaxed, she felt tired and sleepy. She just wanted to have a good sleep. While she was half asleep, she was awakened by the pain in her dantian. At the same time, the small silver snake that was coiled on her arm opened its eyes and looked around vigilantly with its vertical pupils. Yun Chujio sat up and looked around. She did not find anything wrong. She asked Di Baiming curiously, "Prince Charming, what's wrong?" "It seems that something entered the courtyard. It's not a human or a demonic beast. It seems to be some kind of thing. In short, something is coming from all directions." Di Baiming thought for a long time but could not think of a suitable word to describe it. Yun Chujio was confused. It's not a human or a demonic beast. And it's surging over from all directions? Why does it sound so scary? Yun Chujio thought for a while and released Meng Yanshou and Buttface. These two idiots were experienced and knowledgeable, so they might know about it. As soon as Meng Yanshou was released, it said in surprise, "Killing aura. A lot of killing aura is gathering here." Little fairy, I understand now. No wonder you would occasionally go berserk in the early stages. The reason why this courtyard is so strange is because it gathers killing aura. When Yun Chujio heard Meng Yanshou's words, she could not help but be stunned. Killing aura? Why would this courtyard gather killing aura? However, now was not the time to think about it. How could she resolve this killing aura? If all by her body, I'm afraid the consequences are unthinkable. Chapter 39-28. The terrifying killing aura. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about it, a red mist drifted in. Yun Chujio could clearly feel the killing intent within. This fellow hurriedly raised his spiritual energy barrier and said to Meng Yanshou and Buttface, "Aren't you all fierce beasts? Of course you aren't afraid of this thing. Quickly attack." However, Buttface didn't let go of Yun Chujio's left foot. "Little fairy, I'm still a baby. I can't defeat this thing." Meng Yanshou thought to himself. An ancient fierce beast actually acted cute. This Buttface was really shameless. As it thought, it hugged Yun Chujio's right foot. "Little fairy, I'm only half soul now, so I can't defeat this thing. Besides, in this world, the murderous aura is the most fierce. I'm afraid of it." Yun Chujio was so angry that she wanted to kick these two idiots away. At this time, the killing aura had begun to corrode Yun Chujio's spiritual energy barrier. Yun Chujio had no choice but to release De Hua. She felt that no matter how weak De Hua was, he could still block it. Unexpectedly, the killing aura was extremely powerful. In less than a few breaths, De Hua had dissipated. Yun Chujio was about to cry. Why did she provoke such a thing? Once her spiritual power was exhausted and she could not support the spiritual power shield, she would probably die. However, her eyes lit up. She still had the Great Void Mirror. What was there to be afraid of? Hence, this fellow let Mao Mao Chio keep her into the Great Void Mystic Realm. However, Mao Mao Chio said with a sobbing voice, "Master, Xiao Jingjing said that you just came in once, so you can't come in again for a short period of time. It can't be played like that." She was sincerely forcing her to die. "Little Gio, try using the Heavenly Thunder. After all, the Heavenly Thunder is the most masculine and yang energy. It might be able to suppress this murderous aura." The small silver snake in the sleeve pocket reminded. Yun Chujio thought that it made sense, so she raised her hand and struck at the murderous aura. It really did dissipate some of the murderous aura, but there was still an endless stream of murderous aura surging in. Yun Chujio felt that she had probably exhausted all the power of lightning, but she still couldn't disperse the killing aura. This guy couldn't help but want to swear. How could this nameless sword sect have so much killing aura? What kind of heinous and unpardonable evil thing had they done? Di Baiming was also burning with anxiety. This killing aura was very overbearing. Even the beasts like Meng Yanshou and Qiong Qi were terrified. How could he dissolve this killing aura? At this moment, Yun Chujio could no longer maintain the spiritual energy barrier as she struck out lightning. Some blood-red killing aura seeped into the gap between the spiritual energy barrier and directly entered Yun Chujio's forehead. Yun Chujio's heart shook. Damn it, it seemed that the killing aura did not want to kill her, but wanted to enter her body? When she was possessed by the devil, she could not control herself. If she absorbed all the killing aura into her body, would she become a crazy killer? Yun Chujio could not imagine the consequences. Was she still her? No, she would never allow such a thing to happen. She summoned the little Wu Yun and ordered it to strike at her head. This way, it might be able to protect her and help her escape from the courtyard. However, the murderous aura condensed into several blood-red clouds and surrounded the little Wu Yun, preventing it from getting close to Yun Chujio. Chapter 39-29. Monk Wang's relic. Yun Chujio was so angry that her nose almost went crooked. This murderous aura was too damn detestable. Was he trying to anger her on purpose or something? Other than the color of the clouds formed by the blood-red fog being different from the little Wu Yun, the size and shape of the clouds were exactly the same. However, now was obviously not the time to be angry. How could she get out of this predicament? Yun Chujio gritted her teeth. It was impossible for so much murderous aura to suddenly surge in. It was probably related to the large kitchen knife. Since that was the case, she could only try her best. Therefore, she took out the large kitchen knife from her storage ring. Unfortunately, the situation did not improve but became worse. The murderous aura surged into the house crazily. Each and every one of them fought to be first, as if there was some delicious food that attracted them. Yun Chujio was so angry that she had no choice but to put away the kitchen knife again. She used all her strength to continue to use lightning to disperse the murderous aura that was approaching her. The small silver snake in her sleeve pocket was so anxious that its body swelled up. It wished that it could immediately turn into a human to help Yun Chujio fight against the murderous aura. However, although its body swelled up very much, it was still unable to break through the shackles. Yun Chujio was also so anxious that she lost her mind. She said to the killing aura, "All of you stand still. If you come any closer, I will self-destruct my dantian." The small silver snake was so angry that it was twitching. Is it useful for you to talk about this with the killing aura? They have no intelligence at all. Whether you die or not, what does it have to do with them? However, Yun Chujio discovered that the killing aura actually had a trace of stagnation. This fellow's heart was delighted. Could it be that this move worked? Therefore, she continued to say as she struck with lightning, "I don't think you're here for my life. If I die, you won't get anything. Why don't we talk?" Yun Chujio saw that the killing aura had stopped for a moment and couldn't help but be overjoyed. It seemed that this move was really effective. However, the hope in her heart was quickly destroyed because after the killing aura had stopped for a moment, it continued to rush towards her crazily. "Don't come over. Don't come over. It's not right for you to do this. I advise you to turn over a new leaf, put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha immediately. Otherwise, I will use my ultimate move." Hey, Shinjio said loudly. Actually, this guy didn't have any ultimate move. He was so anxious that he was about to vomit blood. The small silver snake was stunned when he heard Yun Chujio's words. He hurriedly shouted, "Little Jio, didn't Monk Wang Su give you a relic in the fallen god abyss? Quickly take it out." Yun Chujio was stunned for a moment. Then she realized that Di Biming was talking about the monk Wang Su, who was guarding the Buddha lotus that they met in the fallen god abyss. Back then, the monk Wang Su was obsessed with not letting Yun Chujio pick the Buddha lotus. In the end, he made her disappear. Before Wang Su disappeared, he gave her a relic and asked her to give it to the bitter Zen sect. However, she had never heard of the bitter Zen sect. Where could she find it? Therefore, the relic had always been in her storage ring. Yun Chujio immediately took out the relic, but she didn't have much hope. The old monk was completely disillusioned by her, so what use could his relic have? However, when she put the white relic in her palm, the relic emitted tens of thousands of golden lights, and the blood-red fog instantly dispersed. To be exact, it fled in panic. Chapter 39:30. You are quite smart. Sometimes Yunchujio was completely dumbfounded. This old monk's relic is actually so awesome? If I had known this would happen, I would have taken this thing out when I was possessed. Why did I have to scare myself so much? At this time, the relic no longer had the golden light from before. Only a faint golden light could be seen in the white. It would only react when it encountered the murderous aura. I've sinned, the old monk who has already passed away. Don't blame me. I just don't know where the bitter Zen sect is for the time being. If I get any news, it'll definitely help you send this relic over. Yunchujio bowed to the relic in her hand and then asked the little silver snake, Prince Charming, how did you think of this relic? I've forgotten about it. Baiming saw that the killing intent had left. He could not help but heave a sigh of relief. I only remembered it when I heard that you put down the butcher's knife and became a Buddha. The cultivation techniques of the Zen sect have always suppressed the evil spirits in the world, so it's a last resort. Yunchujio put away the relic, picked up the small silver snake, and kissed it. My Prince Charming, although you are more stupid than me most of the time, you are still quite smart sometimes. A certain venerable Hei Shinjio trampled the silver snake. Then she asked curiously, By the way, my Prince Charming, you mentioned the Zen sect just now. Why haven't I heard of any Zen sect in the towering sky continent? What does the Zen sect do? Is it just a bunch of old monks chanting scriptures and striking bells? The silver snake glanced at her speechlessly, but it still explained, just because there is no Zen sect in the towering sky continent doesn't mean that there is no Zen sect in other places. The Chan sect is broad and profound, and it is not like what you said about chanting scriptures and striking the bell. Moreover, the Chan sect has always abhorred evil, especially evil things. If one day you meet a Chan sect disciple, don't do anything that goes against the laws of heaven. Otherwise, they will use all kinds of methods to make you repent, or even kill you. Also, fierce beasts like Buttface and Curly Hair must not be discovered by them. Otherwise, they will not be able to escape the fate of being imprisoned. Buttface, who was in the spirit beast bag, suddenly twitched in anger. So what if it was a fierce beast? How could it be an eyesore to others? It was really meddling in other people's business. Yunchujio and Buttface had the same thoughts. She curled her lips and said, According to what you said, that so-called Zen sect is simply a dog meddling in other people's business. Other things aside, what's wrong with Buttface and Curly Hair? It's true that they are fierce beasts, but in my opinion, they are much better than some people who are kind and evil. At least they are just and above-board evil. Hearing Yunchujio's words, Buttface was so touched that his nose was full of tears. He knew that he had chosen the right master. Only such an evil person would be a good match for him. They were simply a perfect match. Baiming himself did not care about some secular etiquette, so when he heard Yunchujio's words, he did not have any objections. He only reminded her, I'm just giving you a reminder. Also, although that Lan Luochen can't cause any big waves, the power behind him is not something you can provoke. Don't provoke him for the time being. Just obediently cultivate in the nameless sword sect. When Yunchujio heard this, her heart sank. Prince Charming, from what you mean, you're leaving? Have you forgotten? You're just a snake now. You're even more useless than me. A certain someone, very good, he finally knew that in the little rascal's heart, he was a stupid and useless existence. He would prove to her how wrong she was. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.